Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Sword Art Online episode review. This one's going to be for Season 1, Episode 15, Return. The first episode of the ALO arc, the Alfheim Online arc. We start Volume 3 of the DVD set, so here is the cover, pretty nice. There's the back, and it is Volume 3 of course. In terms of source material, it's very easy, very simple from here on out, more or less. ALO is just Volume 3 and Volume 4 of the light novels, and it's just, this tells the first half of the story, the other book tells the second half. So this episode specifically is just the first couple of chapters of this. Again, it's very accurate, I think, overall, the anime adaptation. The only thing I will say is that because of the way the book is done, some of it's from like Suguha's point of view, you do get more kind of inner thought than you do in the anime. But at the same time, I felt like this episode of the anime, the one kind of bit of inner dialogue, the couple of bits they gave Suguha, got across, I suppose, overall what the episode was trying to get across. But this is the start of the ALO arc. It's the start of a new arc of the show, the second half of the season. It's very different. I don't think a lot of people, when they start the show, expect it to immediately kind of transition into this separate story outside of the game, that SAO will be over this early. But it works, I think. I really do like this arc, and especially this episode. I would go as far as to say I think this is a perfect first episode for this arc. It does everything it needs to do in terms of setting up stuff that goes on here. Obviously, of course, people are going to dislike this arc compared to the first one, but I definitely don't agree with a lot of the hate that this arc gets. Yes, I will say that the first time I watched the arc, I was a little bit concerned. Like, I really didn't enjoy it as much as the first arc, but, you know, as I said, I kind of had an epiphany with this show after finishing the entire arc, you know, going back to rewatch it, that watching it through the first time, this ALO arc, missed the entire point of what this was about, and really didn't allow myself to enjoy some really good character stuff that goes on in this series, just because of a few things that were kind of holding me back. And there are a lot of the same things that I see people online talk about with this arc, saying it's the worst ever, like there's no reason to like this one. The main ones being that, like it's super exaggerated, but people actually say this, that this entire arc is just fan service. It's completely about this like incest ship between Suguha and Kazuto. It's just adding more characters to Kirito's harem or whatever. And I'm just like, no, it's not. Yes, you get like hints here and there about it, and that, like, yes, some of these issues are brought up, but fundamentally, this arc is about Kirito trying to find Asuna and free her from the virtual world because she's still trapped in there. It's also, on a more kind of personal character side of things, about Kirito and Suguha kind of healing their kind of bond as, you know, cousins, as brother and sister, that had kind of diminished over the last couple of years because of the nature of what happened with Kirito finding out that his mother wasn't actually his mother, it was actually his aunt, and stuff like that. So I just really like this. I like Suga as a character. I think she just, her arc works really well. Yes, of course, there is the whole cousin thing, and the fact that she admits that she's in love with Kazuto, who is you know, you get revealed early on that in this episode that yes, they call each other brother and sister, but fundamentally their relationship is cousins. And so there's that. And I think definitely for me and a lot of people, it's this kind of thing when you see it for the first time, like, what are they doing here? I don't like where they're going. But this is just one of those things in terms of just the fact that this is an anime. This has its origins in Japan. And for the most part, with most mainstream anime, there's not a lot of stuff that's just culturally you don't understand when it's brought over here. This is one of the few things in anime that I've really seen. There's like a few, you know, humor weird things in like shows that you kind of like, that seems kind of Japanese. But this is just a kind of like big concept because they address it a kind of lot over the course of this arc, there's just this idea that like in Japan it's not as kind of frowned upon to have like a cousin romantically involved with their cousin. It's not like super normal as far as I'm aware in Japan. Like it's not just all over the place, but it isn't as kind of taboo as it would be in like the Western world, especially nowadays. But at the same time, you like look up stuff on cousin marriage and stuff like that. Like it's done a lot in the Middle East still. I think it's still done in a lot of royal families and stuff like that. And as I said, Japan, it's still I think when I looked it up on Wikipedia, it was just like uh, instances of this have diminished over the past couple of years, but it's still done. So it's not like shocking in terms of source material coming out in Japan, but in the Western world, it is shocking. But at the same time, I think my main way to address this is that this first episode makes it super clear that this is an important thing for Suguha to deal with herself, because by the end of this episode, she admits that, you know, she has to remain strong knowing that Kirito Kazuto's heart belongs to Asuna, that their connection is stronger than basically her potential relationship with him could ever be. That she makes the decision in this episode to purposefully not try and inject herself in between these two. And the whole arc, I think, for her is the strength that she has to do that, and not just kind of stay back and allow their relationship to flourish, but also to be a person who helps him to find her. You know, with the whole Lifa thing and ALO, but also the support, emotional support she gives him in this episode. You know, asking questions about her, even though about Asuna, even though there might be this little bit of jealousy there that Asuna has this connection with Kazuto that she kind of wants. And especially towards the end when he kind of breaks down in his room just after meeting Sugo and finding out what's happened to Asuna. She comforts him because she cares about him, but also because she knows how much Asuna means to him. And I think that's just really strong of her as a character, and it's a really big move early on in the series to make it clear that, hey, like, the author basically, I didn't write this thing that she falls in love with her cousin for, like, a joke or anything like this. I'm actually trying to do something emotional here that Suga's feelings are real. She actually does really like Kazuto. And so finding out that he had this romance with Asuna in the game is a big deal for her to deal with in terms of accepting that her relationship with him is never going to happen. The stuff that maybe she's dreamed about or whatever is not going to happen. That their relationship is so strong that she just has to accept that that's the case and kind of somehow try and move on from there. And if they just took away the fact that they're cousins, I think everyone would really love Suga as a character and really get behind and understand what her feelings are. But because they just bring up the whole cousin thing, it's like that. But again, it's the culture issue. And once I really did some research on this, I was just like, okay, I still, obviously, culture here, it taboo, don't understand it too much, but I'm kind of like, okay, I can understand her feelings from just that perspective of just almost ignoring the cousin thing and just being like, that this relationship that you want, but it's not going to happen. This kind of unreturned feelings type situation. But as I said, there's some really strong stuff here, and ultimately the goal between giving focus to Suguha in this season, in this arc, is about healing that rift that has grown between them. That when Kirito did find out that he wasn't Suguha's sister, it changed. Like, you get that talk between Suguha and her mother, Kirito's aunt, and she tells the story of basically how Kazuto found out that he wasn't her brother, and that he just looked it up on the internet, that he was super kind of technically focused and stuff like that early on in life. And after that, he got even more deep into video games and kind of shut himself off a little bit from the rest of his family because he had kind of this had been kept from him for so long. And you can see that, like, again, you reference back to the Silica episode, and that he mentions in that at times, like, what does he say specifically, that like he wasn't there for her a lot and she probably hates him for all of the stuff that he put on her because he was kind of so into video games. But Silica kind of assured him that that's not the case. And you get the reference that their relationship wasn't great, mainly because of what Kirito did, not the other way around. But the way that Suguha took that reveal is almost that, okay, we're not that closely related. And the feelings began to develop more than that. And so they give a little bit of an explanation behind where it came from. That there was this big reveal within the family that Kazuto and then she found out about the fact that they weren't related at kind of different times. And then add to the fact that Kazuto already had kind of removed himself in many ways from interactions with the family. He then fell victim to obviously Sword Art Online and was away for 2 years. And now coming back, you can see how much he's trying and is kind of trying to be that big brother figure to Suguha here. Constantly going by her, rubbing her on the head, offering to like make her like breakfast this day or so on. Wanting to do some like sword training with the Kendo training with her and stuff like that. He's trying, and I think towards the end of the arc, you kind of see him mention that to her, that I've been trying to fix this kind of rift that has almost grown between us. And that's the key thing. Like the arc is called the fairy dance arc primarily. And what is the final scene of this? It's Kirito and Lifa dancing in ALO, the brother sister back together basically. The relationship much better than it was years ago or whatever. And fundamentally, I like that arc. Obviously, more stuff comes into play in that Lifa doesn't know that Kirito is Kazuto and vice versa. So the kind of situation happens again where like Lifa falls in love with Kirito, and then it happens again where like this romance that she wants is kind of taken away from her and it can't happen, and how she deals with that. So I think it's a pretty nice arc, all things considering. But some of the other scenes I just want to touch on before I end the video. I really like the scene where they practice Kendo together. That despite all this craziness in Sword Art Online, Kirito likes sword fighting. He really likes the just art of sword fighting, and you can sort of tell that the reason he quit it was primarily because his grandfather was just a bit too, work hard at this, you have to do really hard, and crazy amounts of training and stuff like that. But Kirito, through being almost forced to do this training in the game, has taken an interest in sword fighting, and just seeing her very traditional Kendo style take on the Black Swordsman, signature style, the different stances, and she's kind of analyzing him and just like, weird stance, it doesn't seem very defensive, but he looks composed, so there must be something to it. And then the way the fight actually goes, in that his quick reactions and how agile he is and surprisingly skilled he is really takes her by surprise. And I think the book actually goes into great detail in this fight at explaining the situation there, because I think the fight is from Suguha's point of view, so she's reacting to what Kirito is doing, and he's dodging all of her attacks without actually blocking it with the sword. He's just using his agility and dodging it. Whereas I think primarily in Kendo it is block with the actual sword. And so she's taken aback with the speed and power of his strikes. And then eventually, like, it gets to the stage in the fight where they plan to just do this very light sparring thing. She's forced to almost go full force just to beat him, because really the implication here is that if he had more training to get back to, I suppose, full fitness, after the 2 years of not doing anything, being trapped in the game, he could have put up a much better fight here. Maybe not won, but come close. And it's just a cool thing that he kind of has these skills and they've transferred over from the game to real life. That's just really cool in my opinion. what else is there? Obviously, the stuff with our introduction to the villain, Sugo. Just absolute creep. A villain you absolutely despise from the first scene you meet him to the last. It just it This is the villain that Kayaba wasn't. You know, I talked about Kayaba before. He's more of a kind of intellectual villain. It's more about the theme. But with this guy, you just hate him. You hate what he's doing to Asuna here. You hate how creepy he is with the tongue. The way he talks about her in front of Kirito and the way he just kind of shoves it in his face. Really just like disgusting stuff. And so, obviously, when he gets what's coming to him at the end of the season, you're just like cheering and clapping despite how violent it all is. And yeah, just the impact of those scenes, like seeing Kirito kind of 2 months later, you know, more or less back to full fitness, and she's still trapped in the game. He's coming to visit her. He kind of is on terms with her father, and her father's kind of like, okay, come whenever you want, you know, she'll really like that. But then, and her father comes across as so nice, like, oh, he's almost accepted Kirito into the family, but no, he then makes the decision to accept this almost marriage proposal when his daughter is in like effectively a coma. Like, you're just like, Mr. Yuki, what are you doing? And you're just like, how do you think this is a good idea? Like, obviously, the idea is that Sugo has a completely different personality when Mr. Yuki's around compared to when everyone else is around, and he's clearly charmed him and kept his true personality away from so many people. Just, yeah. In addition, that we gradually learn over the course of the season that Sugo is a rival of Kayaba. They went to the same school, and so they kind of have the same skill sets, more or less. But obviously, Kayaba is more successful with SAO and stuff like that. But we'll discuss that more as the episodes progress. But just that the reveal that he's keeping Asuna alive, effectively, he is keeping her in the game trapped, and he's blackmailing Kirito, you know, keeping him away from her and stuff like that. And it's just this kind of contrast between last season, last arc, and this arc. Kirito is incredibly powerful in the game, could do basically anything. But in the real world, yes, you know, he's got a little bit of sword skill and stuff like that, but he has no power in the sense of this kind of business world. And it's a really big contrast, and you can just see how much it affects Kirito, and that, like, he feels helpless, he feels powerless in this world, and that he can't do anything to save her from here. But he does get that one glimmer of hope at the very end of the episode when Eagle sends him the image of Asuna from the game, and he suddenly has hope that he knows where she is. And you could tell going through his mind that if this is Asuna, you know, whatever games is taken in, I've got to get in there, save her. And that's where we pick up next episode, with him going to see Eagle to get the information, to set the plot into motion, introduce us to ALO, introduce us to Lifa, and just get everything going. In that sense, it's a really good opening episode. Straight away, Kirito wants to save Asuna. Suguha is dealing with her feelings about her brother. You set up the issue between them in terms of they're actually cousins, but they've lived the life as brother and sister for so long, and there's issues between them in terms of their relationship. We get introduced to our villain. We get the first hint about where the plot is going with the image of Asuna, and so on. Everything's kind of set up here, and in that sense, it's a really successful first episode. Any final things to mention? I suppose not really. There is the hint that she says to him after the Kendo thing, and Kirito says, you know, I might actually want some training, you know, will you help me? Again, wants to spend more time with her, make amends for what's happened the past few years. And then she kind of says, I've also been kind of doing some training myself, and she doesn't tell him. Obviously what she's talking about is that she's been playing ALO. She has in many ways wanted to experience what he's been experiencing the last she wants to understand why he would even play a game like this, and so she starts playing ALO, and you know, it's addressed more in the future episodes. I'll get more into that as it kind of comes up, but primarily that is everything I want to say about this episode. I just want to make it clear, I like this arc, and I definitely will have a lot more to discuss as this arc progresses, because I really disagree with a lot of the kind of general internet opinion on this arc, and in the sense, like, you know, the first 14 reviews basically for the Aincrad arc, you know, maybe it's just been me, like, saying everything everyone else has been saying, and it's been interesting, but maybe not the most interesting thing. There's a lot more, I think, proper discussion to come from me in about this arc, because some people, I just think, didn't even give this one a chance because of these little factors as I mentioned over the course of this video. But I really found a lot of interesting stuff in this arc, and I'm really excited to kind of get into the rest of these episodes as we go forward, because there is some really good stuff here. There is some good action, there is some good stuff about the game, some good world building, some great character development. And yes, I too have my own problems with this arc for sure, and we'll get into them as we go along, but I like it. I don't think it's a massive drop in quality from the Aincrad arc at all. I don't really know how I'd compare this arc to, say, like the Phantom Bullet arc and some of the SAO2 stuff, but I think it's probably on par with some of those arcs. But either way, that's been this review. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on this episode and my review. Thanks for watching, and bye.